The NBA is only a few weeks away, and I want to talk about one of the biggest developing stories around the league. Have any of you noticed that there's an arms race going on in the Eastern Conference? So in this video, I'm going to run down the top dogs in the East, go over what I'm liking and disliking about the rosters, and how I think the fight at the top of the conference will go. I'm going to go in order of seeding from last season, cause it's easier than actually thinking about it. And that starts us off with the Bucks, who I already spoke about in my Dame finally got traded video, but I kinda geeked and just got that up ASAP, so I still have a few thoughts about it, as well as their overall layout. I'll reiterate that Dame and Giannis on the same team is truly nightmarish. Their two-man game is unreal, and they instantly have a claim as the best duo in the league, although I'll leave that with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray for now, because they just won a ring and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. To stop one of them feels like giving the green light for the other to score in a historically easy way for them. If you want to stop Giannis, then you gotta crowd the paint and sounds like an open man, and bang, Damian Lillard just splashed one down from the parking lot. Or you can say screw that and try and trap Dame on the perimeter, and too late, you just gave Giannis a 40-foot run up to dunk the ball on your silly little head. The duo can run the pick and roll insanely high up on the floor and give a stupid amount of spacing to everyone else. Quite frankly, I shudder at the idea of having to create schemes to stop them. I'm sure some weird configuration will come along and find some success in slowing them down, but until then, it's going to be an absolute treat to watch those two. One thing I do want to address is that the Bucks' defense getting worse because of Jrue Holiday's departure is being blown way out of proportion. Don't get me wrong, it's true, they are overall worse on that end, but they are still a good defensive team. Giannis and Brook are enough to make any roster better than most teams in the league on that end, and either way, it's a lot easier to make up for the defensive disparity the Bucks now have than it would have been to improve their offense as much as they have. If that didn't make sense, then think about it this way. Dame improved the Bucks' offense way more than Jrue's departure hurt their defense. With that out of the way, I've also seen concerns about their depth, but I think they've done a pretty good job at filling out their roster with guys like Malik Beasley, Cameron Payne, and for the college hoop fans out there, they signed Drew Timme. I honestly think the Bucks have a pretty confident 10 or 11 man rotation for the playoffs, which when you consider some teams try and make a run with only like 8 guys, I think the Bucks could do a lot worse. This does involve banking on guys like Jay Crowder and the 30-year-old Pat Connaughton, but what teams are without their wildcards? Also, I'm keeping an eye on MarJon Beauchamp and hoping his hard work translates to a big sophomore season. Overall, I think the Bucks have assembled an extremely impressive roster. I don't really know anything about Adrian Griffin as a coach, so I can't say much in that regard, but either way, I'm expecting the Bucks to be at the top of the pack, and as of now, they're my favorites to come out of the East. Up next are the Boston Celtics, who have done probably the most this offseason. Dame is obviously the biggest trade by itself, but the Celtics have been busy trying to bolster their championship-level roster, especially in the wake of the Bucks getting stronger. Most notably, they added Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday, while losing Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, and Malcolm Brogdon. Boston has put together a really interesting team, and my biggest question with them is how the trio of Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis will work. The Celtics have struggled with Tatum and Brown being lackluster primary playmakers, and it's not like Porzingis is some masterful ball handler. In my head, Boston's offense looks like the three of them taking turns trying to score, while possessing the ability to dish it out when things turn sour. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. A team doesn't need to have just one primary playmaker to run a successful offense, and fair play, Kristaps Porzingis is a pretty crazy third option, but Tatum and Brown can be really inconsistent in the playoffs. So I think Jrue Holiday's addition is massive in that regard, because not only is he a great defender to make up for the loss of Marcus Smart, but he's also been a solid playmaker throughout his career. So hopefully with all 4 of them together, they should be able to figure out how to keep scoring. And the Celtics are still an amazing defensive team, however the one area they did take a hit in and haven't quite addressed yet is their interior defense. They lost Robert Williams, who was huge in that aspect, although he barely played, so his loss specifically doesn't make a ton of difference for them. But in terms of guys who will actually play decent minutes in the playoffs, they have Al Horford and Porzingis, who don't instill the most confidence on that end. Porzingis isn't really someone you want constantly at the 5, because he is prone to injury, and Al Horford is old. They acquired O'Shea Brissett from the Pacers, who can play an undersized 4, but I don't think it's enough to stop the Celtics from getting beat in the paint, especially if they run into a Giannis-type fella. So we gotta see if they're able to fill out that part of their roster a bit more, but other than that, Derek White off the bench, Peyton Pritchard, who's arguably the coldest white boy in the league right now, This team is no joke, and I'm looking forward to seeing if the Celtics can finally get over the hump and make it to the promised land. Now we've got the Philadelphia 76ers, and... oh brother, do I really have to talk about these f***ing scrubs? I'm sorry, it's just that this team brings me literally zero joy, and season in and season out do not impress me. Now you may be thinking, well, why would a franchise valued at over $3 billion care about what @HoopsHour thinks? But if you stick with me here, maybe I can convince you that I'm onto something. Now Joel Embiid is the league's reigning MVP, but that doesn't change what keeps happening. After finally winning the award he was very openly vying for, it felt like it was time for him to prove himself and take the team deep into the playoffs. Instead, him and the Sixers got smoked in the second round for what feels like the 11th time in a row. I'm serious, Joel Embiid cannot get past the second round, guys. We need to start a conversation. And now the team's relationship with James Harden is absolutely cooked, so it's likely he never plays another game for them, and if he did, I'd be on the lookout that he wasn't helping the other team, because we've seen what James Harden looks like when he plays for a team he doesn't want to be on. They acquired Pat Bev, Danny Green, Mo Bamba, and Kelly Oubre, which is a very uninspiring group of individuals. There is a glimmer of light that sparkles off this turd, however, and his name is Tyrese Maxey. I flip-flop between thinking Maxey has all-star and star-level potential, but either way, he's not even 23 and just had a really good 20-point-per-game season. The spirit of the team does need to improve as a defender though, but he plays with a high motor and can shoot the hell out of the ball. I'm expecting Maxey to take another leap this season, and he's going to need to if Philly wants any chance at remaining competitive in the playoffs, especially if the front office just lets Harden pout from the bench and doesn't force anything to try and trade him. And listen, I know I'm being dramatic right now because the 76ers are just not an interesting team in my opinion, and I don't have any genuine high hopes for them, but they still have Joel Embiid, and he is one of the best players in the NBA. For now, I don't know how kind time is going to be to Joel Embiid, but I don't have a great feeling about him being dominant for like another 5+ years. But nonetheless, having him on your team is like a lock for 50 wins, which means they won't be lower than like a 4th seed and will be at least a second round threat. So I'm sorry, I'm not laughing, I swear. And after that are the Cleveland Cavaliers, who had a really promising season, ultimately ending with their youth showing, however, when they got fried by the Knicks in the first round. Had to mention it. The Cavs didn't make a ton of tweaks to their roster over the offseason, but I don't think that's automatically a bad thing. The most notable signings were Max Strus and Georges Niang, whose spacing and shooting will hopefully unlock a lot more offensively for the team because their limited arsenal got exposed. Besides that, odds are Donovan Mitchell will be very good, like he was in his first season with the team. He took a dive in the playoffs, but he's been very consistent in his career up until that point, so I'm not going to overreact just yet. Darius Garland also needs to be better in the playoffs though, way too many turnovers, but I do understand it was his first time in that setting, and he's only like 23. And most importantly, Evan Mobley needs to get better on offense. He couldn't handle the Knicks' physicality, and his bag was about as deep as a kiddie pool. I expect him to get stronger every season, so I think him not getting bullied in the paint will come in time, but Mobley has to find ways to put the ball in the net. I don't care about him being an outside scorer just yet. I'm looking for hook shots, floaters, elbow jumpers, and whatever other post moves will actually work in the playoffs. And hopefully the addition of more outside shooters will also open up Mobley's ability to distribute the ball from the high post so that he can become a better playmaker as well. So I expect the Cavs to be one of the best defenses in basketball again, maybe even the best like last season, and to have a better playoff run this time around. Next up are the New York Knicks, who I'm not going to go super in depth on because I want to give them their own full preview video. I can't decide between that or a Jalen Brunson appreciation post, and no, I'm not kidding. As a Knicks fan, I'm not thrilled that we didn't make many moves over the offseason, but things do get tricky when the team's payroll is within earshot of the luxury tax line. I like the addition of Dante DiVincenzo though. He'll be bringing some much needed shooting and defense to the team, and with the money we gave him, maybe there's also some belief in his ball handling abilities. The Knicks also signed Isaiah Roby right at the end of last season, but he wasn't eligible for the playoffs. I don't know much about him, but he's a 6'8" wing that can maybe shoot well. Sounds good, I don't know. So without saying too much more, I think the Knicks did get better and have addressed some of their problems. It's just that in an offseason with so much movement and chaos, only making a few tweaks doesn't seem like much in comparison. They have a strong case to be top 5 in the East again, maybe even top 4, and depending on how the cards fall, Knicks to the conference finals. Let's get it, baby. And the last member of the Eastern Conference armament race is the Miami Heat, the ones who kind of feel like they've been left in the dust. Obviously, they banked on getting Damian Lillard over the offseason, and when that fell through, it's like everyone realized, shit, that's all they were trying to do. I don't want to get into all the back and forth BS of the trade, but I do feel pretty strongly that Pat Riley and the Heat overplayed their hand in negotiations. I think they acted like it was only a matter of time until Dame fell into their laps regardless, and ended up getting stingy over very small things. It makes absolutely no sense why a team that was only 3 wins away from the Larry O'Brien Trophy would throw away a chance at adding Dame over pieces like Nikola Jovic or Jaime Jaquez Jr. And don't get me wrong, I separately think a lot of those young players, but to get hung up over them in a Damian Lillard trade, it's madness. The Heat did still add a few guys over the offseason, like Josh Richardson and RJ Hampton, neither of whom I think will significantly move the needle for them, and this is while losing Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, who were big parts of their postseason run. Then there's Miami's core, and Kyle Lowry is getting older, Jimmy Butler is getting older, and Tyler Hero looks like he couldn't give 2 shits about being on this team after the front office tried their damnedest to ship him off in consecutive offseasons now. With how unsuccessful this offseason was for the Heat, I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't the final look of the roster, but either way, I think they'll float around the bottom of the pack during the regular season, somewhere in the 5th to 8th seed range, and as for the playoffs, they're a hell of a basketball club, I'll give them that, they often find a way, but I don't think there'll be any Cinderella run for them this time. Also, ain't no damn way they're hitting threes at the volume and efficiency they were. So that concludes my thoughts on the power brokers of the Eastern Conference. I cannot wait for the playoffs, it's gonna be a dogfight. If I was to predict seedings in a power ranking type style, the top 6 would be Miami at 6, the Knicks at 5, I'd love to put them at 4, but I'm sure the Sixers will be a fine enough regular season team, so Philly's gonna go at 4, and I'll put the Cavs at 3, Boston at 2, and the Bucks as the beasts of the East. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Let me know who you got. There's plenty more in the East that I'll be keeping my eye on. I want to see what kind of noise teams like the Pacers, Magic, and even Wizards can make. The start of this season can't come soon enough, but I'll be grinding till then to get as much out as possible. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be back soon, but until then, take care.